Hi, friends. Welcome. Thank you very much for joining me. This is Annette of AnnetteLeonard.com, back again with another moment for chronic wellness. And I am delighted that you are joining me today for these very special episodes. I am going to be doing an interview with the founder and CEO of a platform near and dear to my heart, and perhaps to yours as well, The Mighty, a health community where millions share their first-person experiences to help and support one another. Mike Porath spent most of his career as a journalist. His daughter Annabel has something called Dupe 15q syndrome, and she led him to start The Mighty. He lives in the suburbs of Los Angeles with his wife and 4 children, the youngest of which is 9 months old. So we are very lucky to be carving out a little bit of his time today. Thank you, Mike, and welcome.
Thanks so much for having me, Annette.
Glad you're here. So Mike, just give us a little background. Tell us a little bit about yourself.
So I'm originally from Cleveland, Ohio. My wife and I are both, we actually went to high school together, so we've known each other a long time. But both my parents are from Cleveland. And I grew up as one of 4 kids, and I've got 4 kids now, so kind of replicating that. Yeah. As you mentioned, I spent most of my career as a journalist. I'm kind of a storyteller, content guy at heart, and I worked mainly at big news organizations, ABC News, NBC News, the New York Times, and along the way, kind of growing my career professionally. When my wife and I had our first child, Annabel, we were thrown for a loop. She didn't do all the things we were told a baby does, and that it took us about 2 years to actually get a diagnosis, a correct diagnosis. That she has something, as you mentioned, Dupe 15q syndrome, which basically means she's got extra genetic material on the 15th chromosome in every cell in her body. And that it really has, her wiring is just kind of different, so she's autistic, has all sorts of other types of challenges. But we're fortunate. She's verbal. A lot of kids with this are nonverbal. So we get to, she's able to communicate, with us in a number of ways. But we're doing the best we can with her. And I think for us, it was the experience that, we got the most help by connecting with other people. As we got started on our own journey. And I think that's what it was in the back of my mind for a long time of, just the experience that we had through this. Could we help launch, something that would help other people kind of get together, find each other, share experiences, because that was so powerful for us. And that was what kind of led to the building of The Mighty.
Interesting. And so The Mighty has been around for 6 years, something like that?
I mean, we ended our first year with 3 people working on this. So, but yes, we actually launched 6 years ago. It's grown in a number of different ways, since then, certainly in terms of size and audience and, community members, but also in different things that we did. We started as more of a publisher, and that kind of led into more of a social network that, that we've been building. And you've been with us, for part of this, time period too, and sharing our stories and finding people on The Mighty and, contributing your own talents there.
It's a powerful platform. I mean, from my experience, kind of finding you, and for me, I guess I only found you about a year ago, and the breadth of experiences, the breadth of illnesses and mental illnesses and disabilities and experiences that are represented are so broad that I really do think there's a place for everyone there, which is a beautiful thing.
That's what we really aim to try to create something that no matter what you are experiencing, that you could, find a home here. And starting with the core belief that people aren't, synonymous with their condition, right? So most people are dealing with not, one thing. Like one of the things that I've learned over the, course of building all this is we used to see mental health as kind of its own, subject matter. And what we saw over time was that most people dealing with some kind of health issue are also dealing with, some mental health issues around all of those things. For instance, I think within our cancer communities, something like 88% of people in those communities are also part of the anxiety or depression community, because
Wow.
it's challenging,
I
right? And
bet the toll it takes.
yes, absolutely. And from my own experiences as a dad of a kid, with special needs, there's a lot that comes with that as well. It
Hmm.
takes a toll on you. So,
Hmm.
um, so we've seen this. It's almost like a Venn diagram of conditions, and people are often dealing with different things. Or they may have one condition, they may have a loved one, a parent, or a child, with something else. And so we try to build a platform that was really focused on the person and allowing them to find the things that are most helpful to them, conditions that are, that they're, interested in for whatever reason.
Hmm. I love that. What was your initial vision for the Mighty, and what has surprised you or delighted you or intrigued you about the ways that has grown and changed?
So it definitely has evolved in ways I didn't, foresee when we got started. My own experience, like what it really came from the day that my daughter was diagnosed. I did what I think most people do. They go to Google, right? And you start looking for things. And the doctor actually didn't have a name for what my daughter had. He had explained test results that came back, and he saw a section of the 15th chromosome and but he said, I don't know what that's called, but just based on what I'm reading, it's unlikely that her mind will develop beyond that of a 5-year-old, which was obviously really difficult, news.
Devastating. Yeah.
And so I spent hours that day, on the computer trying to understand and learn. And I did find the actual condition that it was. And as I was looking that up, I found some medical information on it, but it was not particularly helpful to me. I wasn't there yet, right, about really
Yeah.
understanding that part. I was more
And the
on
grief.
just like, what's my daughter going to be like? What,
Yeah.
dealing with? And that day I found an old PDF file that was, I think, about 10 years old at the time, that had 6 stories written by parents of kids with this condition. And I really connected with those stories,
How
so especially
fortunate.
as someone that is, was a journalist, I appreciated, stories and all that. But these were so much more powerful than the kind of, journalistic work that I was working on. And it was hard to read some of the things around autism and, kids with seizures 30, 40 times a day. But at the same time, there was humor and joy in these stories that was totally unexpected as someone who is devastated by this diagnosis.
And completely missing, I'm certain, from the medical things that
Of
from the
course.
journals you were reading. The human element was absent.
Yes. And so this feeling of like loneliness that I think so many people go through when they're diagnosed with something, as a parent or caregiver, I was really struck by, again, those aspects of these were just real people that were able to manage this. And that made me feel so much better. And it made, my wife and I talked about it that day, saying, there's other people out there dealing with this like we can too, and that was really, those stories certainly weren't on the Mighty, but those were, in my mind, were the first Mighty stories I experienced.
Yeah.
And so that was really the crux of the idea, as I started looking into how do you build a health community. And I looked at a lot of different health communities that were out there, and what struck me was most of them reached a certain size, and then it was harder for them to kind of grow. Getting like the user engagement was difficult. And I'm not a tech guy. I don't write code. I don't know that side of things. But coming out of the content storytelling side, I really believe that if we to build a community, you start conversations, and those
Mm.
conversations can often come from great stories. Stories can be the catalyst, I think, for conversations. And so the idea behind the Mighty was, could we build community by actually starting with stories, stories leading to conversations, conversations leading to community. And that part worked really, really well. And I should say that there was a 5-year gap between or maybe 6-year gap between getting my daughter's diagnosis and actually starting the Mighty. It wasn't like we just jumped into it. We got very involved with the nonprofit organization that helps kids with my daughter's condition. And the idea behind the Mighty was playing in my head for a long time. And it really wasn't until my wife just got sick of me talking about it that when she literally was like, are we going to do this or not? I needed that. I really needed kind of the kick in the butt to say, are we going to keep talking about this, or are we going to do it? And
Mm.
her support was, crucial for me to be able to say, I'm going to leave my job and start something that I really believe in. And, we put our life savings into it to kind of get it going, and it worked. But it
Wow.
was, that was the big, you have that moment where you've got to figure out if you have wings and just and just go. And
Yeah.
so it was a long time before I actually, made the leap.
Yeah. Thanks for watching part one of this interview with Mike. Tomorrow we continue talking about how the Mighty got going, the ways that it changed early on in its mission and vision and continues to grow and change, and also how Mike has settled into his role as a father of 4 children, one of whom has a chromosomal abnormality, and how that impacts his family. I look forward to seeing you here tomorrow, and I appreciate you sharing this time with us today. As ever, I thank you for being here, and until we're together again, be well.